Hey guys, this is Mike Richardson from Hyperledger, demoing today our new project Capena. Before we go straight into the demo, let's have a look briefly at a slide which shows all the different component parts. So Project Capena is split into three things. There's the upstream platform called Delica, or upstream component, which talks to upstream platforms. By upstream platforms we mean platforms where users will have reputation points like eBay and Etsy seller feedback, and in future we'll be adding more platforms where users also have reputation, like driver ratings on Uber, or likes on Twitter, or feedback on Facebook, Amazon, LinkedIn, and so on and so on. And all these credentials, the idea is that they will be issued by the proxy issuer to a user, for the user, in this case Alice, to store in her wallet. And it's called a proxy issuer because it's acting on behalf of the actual platforms. In the same way that a government issues passport credentials, eBay, Etsy, Uber allow you to pull the credentials off there and act as an issuer on their behalf, so that Alice can then talk to that proxy issuer component, pull the credentials across, store them in her own wallet for use as she sees fit, and nobody else can do anything with that data without her permission. And the kind of thing she might want to do with that data is talk to other platforms where they have similar reputation. So for example, Bonanza.com, if she's a seller on eBay and a seller on Bonanza, she could transfer her reputation across to Bonanza, and it gives her the credibility of being a new seller on an otherwise cold start situation for a different platform, where she'd have to build up reputation from scratch if that weren't the case. And similarly, she might want to talk to our Appier agent, which is simply a sort of communications device on a server, which allows her to present credentials across to those platforms. Another one might be the cleangreencompare.com. This is a kind of, actually it's an insurance site, especially for taxi drivers, and you can get quotes for drivers, and that might be an example of where an Uber driver might want to transfer their credentials across and get some kind of discount on their insurance because they're a reputable driver with a good rating. And what we use the terms to describe these components in terms of the verifiable credentials sort of standard that we're using is that the issuers, on the left it's an issuer, the person that takes the data from there is the holder, and then the downstream platforms that ask for a presentation of that data to use it themselves are called a verifier. And the last component is that we have the blockchain, the ledger. In this case, we're using a public net called the sovereign staging net, and the ledger basically stores information about the data. It stores keys and schemas and credit definitions and that kind of stuff. It doesn't actually store any private data, and that's an important point because in a self-sovereign identity system such as this, Alice herself stores the data in her wallet and controls what happens to it, hence the term self-sovereign. So without further ado, let's see if we can get the demo going. Let's have a look. So what we've got here is the proxy issuer, the Delica component that we just saw a moment ago. And you can see that there are a number of different platforms. Some of these are implemented, some not yet. eBay and Etsy, we actually have, that's actually wired up. We've got live production data. We set up eBay and Etsy accounts so that we could do that. We've also got Uber working, but with test data. We hope to sort of bring in the full production data for all these platforms at a later date. But for purposes of this demo, we've just started with a couple. So we'll show three different importing of credentials and transferring that across today in this demo. Now, but to begin with, what I'm going to do is register a new user. On the right-hand side, by the way, is Alice's phone. That's a mirror of the telephone that she'll be using to communicate with the proxy issuer. So we'll register first, and this is just an example of the kind of data that people are used to having to put into a website when they first register. Not really necessarily going to always be there. We don't know whether we're going to need to have registration data or not, but for the moment, we'll do it, and it's an interesting way of seeing how we do connections and credential offers. So what we do then, we click on register, and it gives you a QR code, and the QR code is essentially just a way of getting an invitation from Delica across to the user. So it's an invitation to say, hey, I want to talk to you. And what you do is Alice will come along, as you can see there, scan it, and it says Hyperledger has invited you to connect. So Alice has got an invitation. She can either accept or decline. In this case, we're going to accept. And that takes a few moments. And there it says a new connection has been added to your wallet. So if I go across to Alice's wallet, the first thing in there will be a connection. and that's a Euroledger connection. So far there are no credentials, but there's already one that's been offered, Capena user registration data, and there is the data that we just entered, the registration data, plus a passcode. We're using a passcode at the moment as a way for Alice to log in at a later date, and it's stored in the wallet as well, so it's secure. We may come back and do a different way of website authentication later on. So Alice is going to accept that, and that will be the first credential that gets put into the wallet. And it says a new credential has been added to your wallet, and we can see that. Capena user registration, and there it is. So there is Alice's first credential issued by Euroledger. So now let's get on and get some more interesting stuff in. We can start off by bringing in eBay. So what we first do is we import user credentials from eBay. This is probably going to ask me for some authentication. No, it's pulled the data straight in. Sometimes it asks for your authentication. There's a user access token that expires after a certain amount of time, and you would need to re-enter your authentication details, like your password and so on. So basically, we're not just pulling in anybody's data. eBay does, of course, ask for the user to verify who she is, as do all the other APIs. Otherwise, you could just pull in anyone's private data without them even knowing. So on this occasion, though, it's reused the same access token that we had from before. Unfortunately, all the scores are 0 at the moment. We haven't actually sold anything on eBay yet, but you can imagine that this would be, a feedback score. We may actually try and get a better account with some real feedback scores later, but for purposes of the demo, it doesn't matter. So we pull in these details. These are real live attributes from eBay. There's an absolute stack of stuff that eBay presents. We've just picked a few interesting ones here, and there's also a credential expiry date. Now we haven't actually decided how we're going to do this yet, but we're thinking that where users' credentials change, particularly if they change for the worst, we are going to want to revoke that credential and then reissue a new one. We'll come to that later. Let's issue that credential first of all. So I issue credential. Once again, it should show up on the phone side. There it is, and it says eBay seller rating. And there the same data has been issued across to Alice's phone. Once again, Alice will accept. A new credential has been added to your wallet. So now we have 2. And there's the eBay user data. And the button at the bottom has changed to revoke credential. So Alice could come on at any time and say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. Let's revoke this. We're not going to do revocations today. It's a little bit outside the scope of this demo, but it is implemented, and we'll maybe come back to that one on another demo. Etsy, similar. We can import the Etsy. Etsy is another platform very similar to eBay. You have seller ratings and so on. This one always basically prompts you to allow access. Again, we've already entered our username and password and so on, so we've set up an account. It does ask you for that to begin with. Credential expiry date, again, we set to 1 month. Once again, we don't have a feedback score because we haven't sold anything on Etsy yet, but we'll issue that one across. Once again, that will show up in the phone. And there it is, Etsy seller feedback. So we will accept that one too. And then once again, it's been accepted into the wallet. So Alice now has 3 credentials in her wallet. We'll just do one more. We're going to do the Uber driver. So Alice is now not only a seller on eBay and a seller on Etsy, but she's also an Uber driver. She's very busy. So we're going to do, oops, no, got that one wrong. Let's try, sorry about that. I started typing into the fields. You can't do that. We'll import that one. This is actually just test data. And there we go. So Alice has a name, driver rating of 4.87, activation status of active, trip count is the number of drives. This is actually really what the API would give you. We have had a look at I've done some analysis of the Uber API, and these are the kind of things. So the driver rating is between 1 and 5, and the trip count is the number of times you've taken a passenger somewhere, of course. And the activation status as well, to make sure that you're still an active driver. So those are the kind of 3 things that you'd be using. So let's issue that. And once again, the offer turns up. Uber driver rating, and there we see Alice's name, driver rating, so on, has been offered, and Alice will accept that credential offer. And so now she has 4 credentials, and that's going to be enough for now to continue with the demo. So she has 4. Let's have a quick look to make sure that's correct. Uber driver rating, there it is. Alice Richardson, driver rating, activated status, trip count. So all of the credentials have been offered across and accepted, and they're all safely stored in Alice's wallet. Now, for the second part of the demo, I'm going to have to stop this server and start a new one. So bear with me a second while I do that, because I have to start another server up for the downstream component, which is called Apia. So I'll just start that up. You're actually going to have 3 different servers at different times. 1 upstream Capena and 2 downstream platforms. So it's starting up. Here we go. So the first one we're going to see is the Bonanza site, and this is an exact copy of Bonanza's real site, but I've added some Capena functionality. This is how it would work with a real system. They would take our Apia plugin and they would add some stuff to their front end, and they would be then able to do what are called verification requests, which is basically, Alice would say to them, I want to import my details, and that would trigger a verification request in Bonanza where they would go back to Alice and say, hey, we want your stuff, can you give it to us? So we'll see that now. The first thing we're going to do, once again, as always, with each part of the system that Alice wants to talk to, is do a QR code, an invitation. So we'll do that. And once again, Bonanza has invited you to connect, so we'll accept that. And let's set up another connection. So if we look in the wallet, there'll now be 2 connections, one from Bonanza, one from Hyperledger, as before. And now that the connection's been established, Bonanza are saying, do you want to import feedback from eBay, or do you want to import feedback from Etsy? So let's go for eBay first. It'll say awaiting credential. I'm back on the phone. It's saying an eBay seller proof. You received a request for proof of credentials. So basically, Bonanza is requesting the following information. It'll just ask Alice to just double check that, and oh, that looks fine to me. So Alice will say, okay, you can have all that stuff. And some of that stuff is then going to get displayed. Bonanza have decided they only actually want to display 2 of those attributes on this occasion. They could use them all or whatever, it's entirely up to them. Similarly for Etsy, we'll do the same kind of thing. And there's the Etsy, we'll call the Etsy proof. The information, this organization is requesting the following information, and there's the credentials that we loaded from Etsy earlier on. So we'll click on present on the phone, and that should go across as well, and Bonanza will display it. So there we go. So now Bonanza has the information that Alice has allowed them to import, and so when you go on to Bonanza to buy something from Alice, it's called mycar1126. That's just the name of the account that we set up a while ago. But you go on there and basically instead of just having a rating on Bonanza, which could be 0 or because you may be a new user, you now have a feedback score from eBay and a feedback count from Etsy. So someone buying from that seller on Bonanza would have a degree of confidence that that's a trustworthy seller that they might not otherwise have, were they just dealing with a new Bonanza user, which we think is quite cool. So that's Bonanza. There's one more part of the demo still to do, and once again I'm going to need to stop the server and start a new one up. Let's just quickly do that. This is going to be the Clean Green Compare, the insurance site, so we'll start that one up. That shouldn't take too long. So wait for that one to come up. And here it comes. And this is a kind of mock-up of an insurance site that specialises in insurance for taxi drivers, Uber drivers, of course, being taxi drivers. And you can see it's a form where I've kind of entered in a load of information. It's got Alice, it's got a name. It's the usual kind of stuff that you have to put in when you fill out an insurance quote. We request a quote, except we've added some new fields here for Uber drivers, so let's get on and do that. We'll click on the Get Uber Ratings. Again, it brings up the code, because every new platform that we deal with is going to request a connection. Once that connection is done, that will stay there for good. You don't have to keep doing that every time. And Clean Green Compare has invited you to connect, so let's create a connection with them. And that one's done, so it should then go across, get the Uber ratings, Uber proof. It does that automatically. So we're looking trip count 19876, activation station active, driver rating 4.87, so on. We saw that earlier, so Alice will present that, and that should pull those figures in. There we go. It's got the Uber ratings and the trip count, and on this occasion, basically, there's a little bit of business logic in there that says if your driver rating is above 4.5 and your trip count is more than 1,000, then we'll give you a 20% discount, and if it's between 4 and 4.5, it would have been 10% or whatever. That's, of course, for the insurance companies themselves to work out. But it illustrates quite nicely how we can pull in credentials, and they have a positive use for the users. In this case, Uber drivers getting a discount on their insurance. Just finally, to summarize again, so Alice ends up with these 4 credentials. She's got the connections, and of course these credentials can be used for all sorts of different purposes. So that's the end of the demo. Thank you very much for watching.